I'm Heather Hood. I'm an alcoholic. Hello. I'm totally scared, man. To those that are new, welcome to Alcoholics Anonymous. I'm grateful for the opportunity to stand here and to say that I am scared, because that's the truth. And when I got to Alcoholics Anonymous, I had no idea how much I was driven by fear, and today I have a solution to that. And the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous, it tells us that when these things crop up, that we ask God to remove them and to direct our attention to what He would have us be. And yeah, it's a reminder this is being recorded. And so I do ask God to remove this fear and direct my attention to what He would have me be, and hopes that I can carry the message of Alcoholics Anonymous, which is what I'm here to do. Share what it was like, what we were like, what happened, and what we're like today. And Doreen, thank you so much for asking me to come out and share. We actually went down to Galt recently to hear Doreen share, and she did such a great job in carrying the message of Alcoholics Anonymous, and I so greatly appreciate it, and I appreciate you. Thank you. And I've had some folks come out from Red Bluff. I'm from Red Bluff, and they came to support me, and thank you so much for coming out. It has really made me feel a part of the fellowship in Alcoholics Anonymous, and in our little small town group, you know. So anyways, I have a sobriety date. It is November 14th of 2017. I have a sponsor. Her name is Linda T. She knows that she's my sponsor. I talk with her often, regularly. And I have a home group. It's the Alkies in Action group of Alcoholics Anonymous in Red Bluff. It's a great little meeting, great little group that we got going on. If you're ever in Red Bluff, come visit us Sundays, Tuesdays, and Thursdays, 6:30. Great meeting. And I work with other women in the program of Alcoholics Anonymous, taking them through the process of the 12 steps as outlined in the book Alcoholics Anonymous. And I'm so grateful for the opportunity to do that. And I'm very aware today that the thing about it is I've had experience in Alcoholics Anonymous in the past prior to November 14th of 2017, and I worked with others, and I came to meetings of Alcoholics Anonymous, and I showed up to feed my ego, and that's not the experience that I'm having today, and I'm incredibly, incredibly grateful for that. I do have a very clear understanding of what it is that we're doing here today, and what my purpose is in an AA meeting, and thank God, you know? So, I talk kind of fast. People tell me so. Oh my gosh. Yeah. I love Alcoholics Anonymous. I love what it does, and what we get to experience here. And to those that are new, I hope that you get to experience all that AA has to offer. I've come to find that it is far greater than just not drinking. When I got to Alcoholics Anonymous, I had no idea of how to do that. I had no idea of how to not drink, and to put other substances in my body to alter my state of being. When I was young, like it starts, I was born, whatever. I'm just kidding. But I've been thinking lately about, like, in my experiences of looking back prior to picking up my first drink, and what I was like at that time. And I remember from as far back as I can remember that I've always felt uncomfortable. And I remember, like, when I think back of, like, just being so consumed with self. In the second grade, this is ridiculous. I got this haircut, and I was just, like, so embarrassed, right? And, like, nobody cared, I'm sure, but I was so consumed with this that I went to school and I kept my head down on the table the entire time. I was so afraid of what I thought you thought about me. I was consumed with myself, just scared, just totally scared, and just self-obsessed, and and that's it. I was a liar, dishonest, and I've come to find that, I'm dishonest. Not because, it's not because I'm a liar, it's because I'm afraid. I lie because I'm afraid. And I lied when I was young, and I don't know, I just always felt, and the thing about this too is prior to picking up my first drink, I felt separate. I felt separated from my own family. I would go to family functions, and I always felt not a part of. And I was consumed with resentment, and I've come to find, and looking back in my experiences, when I was younger, my dad would ask me to, help with the dishes after Christmas dinner or Thanksgiving dinner, and I would think, like, why me? Like, why not my sister? He loves my sister more than he loves me. You know what I mean? And I started, like, acquiring these ideas, these false beliefs, and I had resentment. I started resenting my dad for that. When I got to Alcoholics Anonymous, I truly believed that my dad loved my sister more than he loved me, which is a lie, but I believed it, And so on the way here today, we were talking about I was with Jamie and Paul, and we were talking about self-will. And I truly believe that it is self-will that has led me to Alcoholics Anonymous. I believe that. I started making decisions for myself when I was young, and it led me to drinking. I started like rebelling against my family. I just did whatever I wanted. I made decisions based on self, and I ended up drinking. And this is the thing of what I want to share. When I don't remember my first drink and it like being overcome by from the tip of my toes to the top of my head, like that's not my experience. I don't remember that. You know what I mean? But I do know that I drank, and I drank for the first time when I was 12 or 13 years old, and all the things that I had experienced prior to that, of the self-obsession and the fears and all of those things, at some point when I look back, I can realize that those things went away when I drank alcohol. When I drank alcohol, I was relieved of just all of that, and I was free to be me. I was comfortable in my own skin. And so from the get-go, I loved what alcohol does for me. Loved it. And I had incredibly humiliating experiences when drinking when I was a teenager. And I was thinking about, so when I must have been 13 or 14 years old, maybe 15, and I was drinking, of course, and I, of course, got drunk. And I remember coming to the next morning, and I was in a hotel room, and I had been with some guy that I knew him, but I didn't know him, And I remember coming to, and the maid was at the door, and the door was wide open, and I was just laid up in this hotel room, and I'm like 14, 15 years old, and I was in a sheet, and my clothes were gone, and he was gone, and the maid was, wanting me to get up to leave. And the thing about it is this, I'm a teenager, I live down the street, I don't drive, and my best thinking is that, I'm like, well, I'm going to get one of these sheets, I'm going to wrap it around my body, I'm going to make it look like I went to a toga party, so when I'm walking down the street, people will think I was at a toga party. It's like what? But that's what I thought. And the thing about that, and I share that because that was a humiliating experience, and I walked home in a sheet. It was humiliating, but it never ever crossed my mind to stop drinking. I didn't think because of that experience, maybe I shouldn't drink anymore. It crossed my mind to stop hanging out with them. You know what I mean? I'm never going to hang out with him. Got a resentment, and that's something that I got to take a look at here in Alcoholics Anonymous through the process of inventory. But so that kind of experience, and I had those experiences all the time. Not necessarily in a sheet, but I had those experiences all the time that were humiliating, and it never crossed my mind to stop drinking. The fact of the matter is I loved alcohol. I loved what it did. I loved what it did for me. Loved it. I love what came along with it. I loved sneaking out of my window and going and getting drunk and being drunk and passing out. And the thing is, I thought that was all normal. You know what I'm saying? I thought that passing out and doing all of that stuff was just what people do when they drink. Well, come to find out it's not. Most people actually have a drink, maybe two, and they stop drinking. Not me. I get wasted. You know what I mean? And blah, blah, blah. So I had a lot of humiliating experiences, and the things that I dropped out of school, and I had no relationship with my family. My dad got to the point where he didn't want to have anything to do with me. He kicked me out of the house when I was 15 years old, and I lived on the streets, and I did things I said I was never going to do. I was a juvenile delinquent. I went to juvenile hall. I did a lot of stuff came about with the way that I was living my life. And I truly believe, I would think, how could a father do that to his own daughter? You know what I mean? How could he just kick me out on the streets and not even care? And I resented him for that so very much. And I blamed him for the way that my life was. By the time I got to Alcoholics Anonymous and getting sober, I truly believe that if my dad hadn't been the way that he was, I wouldn't be the way that I was. If he hadn't done those things to me, I would not be the way that I am today, which is false. It's false. But I believe that when I got here, and anyhow, I ended up out on the streets and living on the streets and doing things I said I wasn't going to do, and hanging out with people that I shouldn't be hanging out with. And I did a lot of outside issues, and I drank in between, and and I loved it. I loved it, and I didn't really know, well, whatever, I loved it. I knew there was a time though when I look back that I knew that the things that I was doing with those outside issues, that wasn't the life for me. I knew that. And I got to a point where there was a gentleman, it was just the whole experience that I had, and it came to me that I didn't want to live this way anymore. And so I had stopped doing drugs, and I started drinking a lot. And it was fine until it wasn't. So I ended up having a child throughout this time, and my son is now 12 years old. And I'm going to share a little bit about him here in a little bit. And, you know, I've come to find here in Alcoholics Anonymous that alcoholism had brought me to a place where the love of my child wasn't enough for me to get sober and stay sober. It was never sufficient. And that's a thing, when I walked into Alcoholics Anonymous and having to face the reality that I no longer have my child, that's a painful thing for a woman to experience. It's a painful thing to experience and to face the reality that this is where I am. I don't even have my own child. But there's good that comes with that, which I'll share about. But so I had a child, and I was thinking recently about the fact that I would have these experiences where I truly, the way that I was living my life I wanted to do something different, and I wanted to be different. I had a child, and I wanted to be a good mom. And I didn't want to do the things that I was doing. And my experience is that when I look back, that there were periods of time when I wanted something so much more than what I was experiencing, but I had no idea of how to get there. I had truly no idea of how to be a mom. I truly had no idea of any of those things. I didn't know how to do that stuff. But I wanted to be able to do that. I really wanted to be normal. I wanted to be able to get up in the morning, to go to work, to raise a child, and to be able to come home in the evenings and do what I see other people doing, where they're raising children, giving them a bath, feeding them dinner, blah, 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 putting them to bed and going to bed, right? And then waking up the next morning and doing that all over. Like, I wanted to be able to do those things, but I found that I was incapable of doing so. And this is the deal. So I had this child. I wanted to do something different. I moved from Southern California to Northern California. I moved to be with my dad, and what happened is that alcoholism, the progression of alcoholism, began to take place in my life, where I wanted to do good, so I started going to school. And what happened for me is what had always happened for me, is alcohol started becoming the most important thing in my life all over again, where I would go to school and I would do good for a while in the beginning, then I would start drinking. And then what would start happening is that I'd be drinking on the weekends, and then I wouldn't show up for school, and then I'm not doing the things I'm supposed to be doing, and blah, 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 blah. And what happened is I ended up making it through school, and I have this little boy, and I love him very much, and I'm, trying to be the best mom that I can be. And I started, I'd be sober for a period. I would drink. I would do outside issues all over again. And that was on the weekends. And what started happening for me is that I got this job. I got a very good job, and I wanted to live a normal, happy life. And drinking took precedence. And I got to the point where this is the deal. And this is what makes me an alcoholic. All the stuff I'm sharing with you, I just need to waste time, right? We got 50 minutes, so I'm just talking or whatever. But there's an importance here of what makes me an alcoholic. And I've come to find in Alcoholics Anonymous that the truth of the matter is that it's not outside circumstances, and it's not getting arrested and getting DUIs and all those things, which I did experience those things. Those aren't what make me an alcoholic, because there are people who are not alcoholics who can get DUIs, be sent to Alcoholics Anonymous, but they don't suffer from the disease of alcoholism. They may be able to stop drinking because of the consequences of what they can stop. They can stop. Or moderate, whatever, they can stop. I was incapable of doing that. My experience is this is what makes me an alcoholic. I got to the point where what was happening for me is I would drink. I would start drinking, and I would be drunk for 3 days, 4 days. I'd end up in places I had no idea of how I got there. I would end up in Chico. It's like, I don't even go to college. You know what I mean? Like, what am I doing here? I'd end up in Barstow, random places. And who goes to Barstow? You know what I mean? Like, how do you end up there? Like, that's where I end up, whatever. And then I end up living out there with somebody I just met, you know what I mean? For weeks, months, whatever. But the thing about it is this. I would have those experiences. As alcoholism progressed within me, what takes place is that I start drinking, and I'm incapable of stopping once I start. And the thing is, I have no idea that's what's happening to me. I had no idea that once I started, I was incapable of stopping. So I would drink, and I would be drunk for 3 or 4 days. And in the meantime, what's happening is I have my son, who's 3 years old, and I take him to the babysitters. And the reality for me is there was a point in time when I left my son with a babysitter for 2 months. And it was not that I'll tell you, I would go and pick him up, and I would be drinking, and I would take him to these sordid places, right? Places that you should never take a child. And I would be standing there in the yard while he's playing, and he's this little boy. He's just the cutest little thing. And I would be crying as I'm continuing to drink because I didn't want to be living that way. I didn't want to be drinking. And I'm looking at this little boy like, I have failed. I have failed as a mother. Crying. And I would go take him back to the babysitter, and then I would just continue to drink. You know what I'm saying? And I would have that experience. And what would happen for me is every single day it was going to be different. Today, I'm going to go get my son. Here comes the idea, like I want to live this normal life. Today, I'm going to go get my son. I'm going to take him to the babysitters. I'm going to go to work. I'm going to get off work. I'm going to pick him up. I'm going to take him home. I'm going to feed him. I'm going to put him to bed. Right? That's how my morning would start. That's what the thoughts would be. And what would happen is that at some point throughout the day, I would start thinking about drinking. And when I would get off, and this is when I still had a job, when I would get off work, I would go and I would convince myself that I'm just going to have one tall can. I'm just going to have one tall can, and then I'm going to go get him. And of course, like I have no idea that once I put alcohol in my body, I experience what the book Alcoholics Anonymous describes, Dr. Silkworth's description of alcoholism, as I would suffer from the phenomenon of craving, the physical allergy, which once I put alcohol in my body, I'm incapable of stopping, and I didn't know that. So I would go get this one tall can, and before I know it, it's 2 o'clock in the morning. You know, I've gone to the store numerous times. I've got these bottles of vodka or whatever I have, and I got a case of beer, and I'm just drunk. And I'm having this experience where it's 5 o'clock in the morning now. I'm passing out. I'm coming to at 7, got to get ready for work. And, you know, and I had this whole experience all over again. And what ended up happening for me is this job that I love so much, and they loved me there. I ended up leaving that job because I had disappeared for 3 days. I ended up in Vallejo. That's where I go to, Vallejo, whatever. I ended up in Vallejo, and I was just drinking. I was more or less insanely drunk those 3 days, and what happened is and this is the thing about it, is this babysitter is calling me. She starts calling me, right? When I start drinking, she's calling me over and over. I mean, I must have had like 58 missed calls from her. And I may have answered them in the beginning with the excuses of, well, I'm going to work late, I'm going to do this. And at some point I stopped answering the phone. You know what I'm saying? And my job is calling me because I haven't shown up in 3 days. And they're wondering if I'm okay. Like, are you all right? Are you alive? Are you like... And I don't call them back. And the thing about it is I don't even realize this until I come to after those 3 days and I check my voicemails, and people are really concerned. They're really concerned. And my best thinking is I need to quit this job. You know, and the reality is when I look back, it's these things, my child, the job, relationships, these things are getting in the way of me drinking. They're getting in the way of me doing what I want to do, which is something that I've had to face here in Alcoholics Anonymous. You know, because I wanted to, you know, that whole, well, I'm a good mom and I'm a whatever. Like, I'm driven by me. That's the reality for me. And so I quit that job, and the thing about it is I showed up there and I was so afraid. Now, I had been drinking. You know how it is when you come to after 3 days and it's like, oh my God. Like, first of all, my mind is racing uncontrollably. I can't stop thinking. I'm consumed with the things that have happened over the last 3 or 4 days, and him and that, and I stole that, and I da-da-da-da-da-da-da, because I would go into stores and I started stealing alcohol because I had no money. And I would just go in and grab alcohol and I would leave. And I've got to make amends for doing so. We do that here. Yeah, so the fear of like what they're going to think of me and losing my job and all this and that, and like all this stuff is coming to me. And I was so afraid I didn't even walk into my job. I had somebody go in there for me and tell them I was quitting and to get my last paycheck. And of course I took that paycheck and I went and got drunk. I continued to drink. And so inevitably I lost my son, and he ended up with his dad, and thank God. He's a beautiful little boy today, and he's happy. And I'll just share one thing about, in the intervals of my drinking, I remember seeing my son at the top of this stairs in this house that we were living in, and he was so afraid of me. He was so afraid of me because in the intervals, in between the time I was drinking, when I would have those times when I would get sober or be sober for a short period, I was so angry. I was full of anger and rage, and he was scared of me. And as soon as I started to raise my voice, that little boy, I remember his face just going blank, and he was overcome with fear. He was overcome with fear. And that's painful. It's painful to face that stuff, but it's the reality of who and what I am. And I've had to come to Alcoholics Anonymous and really begin to do things differently here in order for those things to change in my life. not just sit in an AA meeting, but to do Alcoholics Anonymous in order for me to change these behaviors and these things about myself. I can't just come in and expect that anger is going to be gone, like all this stuff's just going to go away. It doesn't work that way. There's a lot of work to be done here. Alcoholics Anonymous, it is simple, but it is not easy. And it is incredibly difficult for people like us to take a real hard look at ourselves. Worth it, but it's not easy. The book tells us it's a hard pill to swallow when we're doing this stuff. So anyhow, yeah, what ended up happening is I just had those experiences. I lost everything as a result of alcoholism, as a result of drinking. I lost cars. Like I said, I got DUIs, lost my son, lost relationships, lost all of those things. And the fact of the matter is whatever. The reality for me is that I would be drunk, and I would be drunk for 3 or 4 days. I would pass out, come to, and I got to that place where I would tell myself that I can't live like this anymore. And I meant it. And I meant that I'm never going to drink again. I would tell myself I'm never going to drink again. I can't do this anymore. And I would tell you the same thing. And I meant it, and I believed it. And the thing about that is I was incapable of doing that. I was incapable of stopping on my own power, and I had no idea of that, because I would make that resolution, and within a short period of time, the thought would cross my mind to just have one beer, one tall can, or two, you know what I'm saying, just a couple. And I'd put them in my body, and I would experience all over again the phenomenon of craving. I'd be drunk for 3 or 4 days, pass out, come to, and tell myself I'm never going to drink again. And I was having that experience over and over and over. And the thing about it is the consequences of my drinking, those things that I experienced, were never sufficient enough for me to get sober and stay sober. I'm a real alcoholic, and it definitely, absolutely, 100% takes a power greater than myself in order for me to stay sober one day at a time. So I ended up in Alcoholics Anonymous. I had the experience, I prayed one day, and it wasn't like a prayer, God help me. That wasn't my experience. It was just like I have no idea what's going on in my life, like no clue. And this gentleman was placed in my life. His name's Charlie S. He's from Southern California. He came up to work with my dad, and that man, he was sober 20-something years, and he was the best example of Alcoholics Anonymous that I ever could have seen. Not heard, seen. He showed up, and he never ever, he knew that I drank, and he knew that I was miserable. He would see me at work, because I started working for my dad. When I would show up, I worked for my dad 3-4 days, you know what I mean? Then I would disappear. But this man, and I was sharing with Paul and Jamie earlier, like this man, he showed me what it is to be a member of Alcoholics Anonymous in good standing. And he would come and get me, and he would take me to meetings of Alcoholics Anonymous. And the thing is, I was so miserable on the inside, and I knew that he was a member of AA, not because he told me, but because I would spend time with him, and I would hear the phone calls coming in from drunks. He would talk to alcoholics all day long. And the thing about it is, he would answer their phone calls. You know what I'm saying? Like, he wouldn't say, call me, and then not answer his phone. He would actually answer. And the thing is, he didn't tell me this. I saw him do it. I saw him do these things. He would show up early to the meeting, and he would leave late, and he was just, gosh. Anyways, I'm grateful to him. I'm incredibly grateful to him, because he showed me what AA is and what it's not. He showed me a lot. And I learned how to show up. So the thing about it is, I had nowhere else to go, is the reality for me. I was miserable. He started taking me to AA meetings, and the truth of the matter is I would hear him talk to these drunks, and he was talking to this guy that he was sponsoring, and I'm like, oh my God, I want him, right? So I came to Alcoholics Anonymous for a man. Go figure. Whatever. Self-seeking. I ended up in Alcoholics Anonymous, and I'm going to get him, didn't happen, but whatever. So I ended up here, and this is what I'm going to share about the experiences with this gentleman, is that he showed me, like I said, he answered phone calls, but he also, what I got to see is that he sat down with alcoholics, and he opened the book, Alcoholics Anonymous. I saw him do it, and there was a man that he was sponsoring that said to me, Heather, I had all different kinds of experiences. People telling me, Heather, I think you're more afflicted than you realize. And I'm like, what? What does this mean? You know what I mean? I don't understand what they're talking about. That I was not thoroughly convinced I was an alcoholic, and it's taken experience and time for me to get to a place where I had become thoroughly convinced. But this man sat down with me, and he opened the book, Alcoholics Anonymous, and we began to read, and we read from the beginning of the book, from the blank page, and he told me, this is what you know. He opened the book to the blank page and said, this is what we know. And he gave me a prayer to do, and which I did. I followed the direction. I was given, and he led me through the book, Alcoholics Anonymous. He led me up to where he could take me, which is where he ended up stopping, and he's not sober today. He stopped at the 4th step. And he told me, I can take you up to this page. I can take you up to page 63, 60, like, can I do that? Sure. And here's what happened for me. I got into the book Alcoholics Anonymous, and I got the knowledge of alcoholism. I found out that I suffered from a mental obsession and a physical allergy, that the physical allergy is what I described. Once I started to drink, I was incapable of stopping on my own power. And I could be drunk for 3 or 4 or 5 days. I don't know. And this is what I found out, is that once I've been separated from alcohol for a period of time, I always go back to drinking. The great obsession, the book tells us, the great obsession of every abnormal drinker. I want to be able to drink normally. That's it. I want to have 1, I want to have 2, and then stop like I see normal people doing. And I want to go home and live my normal life. And that's not the reality for me. But I would become consumed with being able to do that. I would become consumed with being able to just have 1 or 2. And I would convince myself of that over and over again, that this time that's what was going to happen. And it never did. It never did. But I believed it, and whatever. So I got the knowledge of alcoholism, and the thing about it is, what I've come to find is knowledge isn't going to keep us sober, and the book tells us knowledge will not keep us sober. And I didn't apply Alcoholics Anonymous. And when I began to be restless, irritable, and discontented because the fellowship of Alcoholics Anonymous is not treating my alcoholism, when that happened for me, I ended up drinking. I put a substance in my body to alter that state of being, because for an alcoholic to be sober, it's not a pleasant experience if you're not doing stuff. You know what I mean? It's just not. So, So what has happened for me is that, and I love when the book talks about the delusion that we're like other people, or presently maybe has to be smashed. And the first step in recovery, we have to fully concede to our innermost selves that we're alcoholics. That's the first step in recovery. And until that happened for me, the knowledge that I got, the hanging out in the meetings, all this stuff didn't mean anything to me, because I did not truly believe within my being that I was an alcoholic. And if I'm not thoroughly convinced of that, I'm not going to do AA. Why would I do that? You know what I'm saying? That doesn't make any sense. I'm not going to do something. It's just, why? So I would hang out here and whatever. What happened for me is I had the experience of I drank. And it wasn't like it was. And it wasn't that I drank and I cried. And I really, truly was like, I'm never going to be able to get sober. I'm never going to be able to get sober. And I was calling people from Alcoholics Anonymous, crying, belligerent, falling in my own piss. That's what I was doing in my backyard, and thinking like I'm never going to be able to get sober. And, by the grace of God, I've ended up in Alcoholics Anonymous, which I truly believe, it's like we end up here, right? And people leave and we end up right back here. It's like, I think there's something to that. You know what I mean? I think we might be meant to be here, whatever. But, so I ended up back in Alcoholics Anonymous. And what happened for me is I started getting serious about recovery. I stopped going to meetings where there was no recovery being shared. I started going to meetings of Alcoholics Anonymous where there was solid Alcoholics Anonymous. And we didn't do and I love so much of what you shared about not getting up, because it's disruptive. I've had to learn basic things here in AA, because I would get up in the middle of the meeting and walk across the row of men so they can look at my ass. That's what I would do. I wanted attention. And that's how we get it, right, as women and whatever. And I had to learn how to sit in my seat. And the thing about it, it's the examples that were set before me that showed me that. They showed me how to sit in my seat, because people were not getting up. And it was kind of like oh, this is awkward. You know what I mean? I'm not getting up in this meeting. They shut down coffee. We weren't up moving around. We were there for a purpose, and that was to get sober and to stay sober and to be in the meeting and to be a part of what was going on. And I learned about being on my cell phone in the meeting, right? So I have no idea of this stuff. I'm just in here my life's so important. It's all about me, but it's not. And Charlie turned to me when I was on my cell phone, and he told me to show some effing respect for Alcoholics Anonymous. And I have never got on my phone since that time in a meeting of Alcoholics Anonymous. And what I've come to find is that he shared that with me. And I was like, oh my God, he's yelling at me. He wasn't. He was just, being straightforward. But of course, he's super sensitive, right? And what I've come to find, though, is that with time is that how very inconsiderate it is of me to the brand new person sitting next to me who's suffering, dying from alcoholism. And I'm over here on my phone distracting them from hearing the message that's here in Alcoholics Anonymous. You know what I'm saying? I learned these basic things. I learned not to share. I had nothing to share when I got to Alcoholics Anonymous. What I thought, what I believed, and the stuff I was talking about in AA meant nothing, because I couldn't stay sober. I could not stay sober, so there was nothing more for me to say. And I got to sit in meetings of Alcoholics Anonymous and listen. and hear the message of recovery. And I got involved with a sponsor, and I got into the 12 steps. And I love so much of in how it works when it says that God could and would if he sought. Wait. We asked his protection and care with complete abandon. And when I met with the sponsor, she had asked me if I was willing to do that. And this is what happened to me. And I said, yes, I'm willing to do that. And what came to me is, and she's just sitting there. I'm like, what are we doing? And what came to me, though, is in that silence and in that moment, it came to me to ask this power for help, which the fact of the matter is I didn't really, when I got to Alcoholics Anonymous, I didn't have any preconceived ideas of God. I didn't have any of that stuff. We never talked about that stuff. We never it wasn't, whatever. I hit my knees and I asked this power for help, and the help has been provided through the process of the 12 steps. Ooh. So am I going to stop like at 11, or is it going to be like a couple minutes till or something like that? Okay, perfect. Thank you. So, thank you. I mean, now that I'm talking, it's like, we can stay here all afternoon. I mean, I'm sure you guys don't want that, but whatever. Look, I have some people going home with me. Yeah, it's going down after the meeting. I'm just kidding. I don't take hostages today. But anyways, I kind of want to fast forward because this is what happened to me. I was very involved in Alcoholics Anonymous. I did a lot of speaking. I sponsored a lot of women. I did a lot of things in AA. And here's the deal. I showed up to meetings of Alcoholics Anonymous, and I worked with others in order to feed my own ego. In order to be an Alcoholics Anonymous, look at me, and self-involved. And and there's a lot of experiences that took place, but the fact of the matter is I became so self-involved, consumed with me. I was so afraid of what you thought about me. And what I ended up doing is I ended up putting a substance in my body that was prescribed by a doctor, but I put it in my body. And what happened for me is it separated me from the fellowship of Alcoholics Anonymous. It took me away from, I became disconnected in AA. And here's the deal. This is Alcoholics Anonymous. Very respectful, very mindful of AA. I'm not going to say what this was, but I will share that I have heard numerous times in Alcoholics Anonymous how these things that are prescribed by physicians take us out. As alcoholics, they take us out, and they end up killing us. We're alcoholics. What I've come to find through the experience that I had is if it alters my state of being, I am incapable of stopping once I start. Whatever that looks like, incapable. So I put this in my body. I'm not going to go through all that. The only thing I'm going to share is this. That experience brought me to a place. I was with a man who was living behind a church. He was homeless. I put myself in that position. My life was chaotic. It was crazy. I was consumed with me. I was locked in my house. I was afraid to leave my house. I was afraid of people. Every single day I was going to go to Alcoholics Anonymous, or every single day tomorrow I'm going to go to AA, because I knew there was a solution offered there. And that didn't happen until it did. But the experience of that is what ended up happening for me is I found myself in the morning putting a substance in my body, which got me up. And in the afternoon, I got to the place where I took a handful of stuff to bring me down, and I downed it with a bottle of NyQuil. And I laid in my bed, and for one split second, the fear of losing my life, because the truth of the matter is I didn't know what all this mixtures of all this stuff was going to do to me. I had no idea, no clue. Maybe it would have killed me. I don't know. But for a moment, the fear of losing my life came to me. And the very next thought was whatever. And I ended up just out of it for 2 days. And that experience, it brought me to a place, and I want to share this as well because this has changed in my life, that throughout that period of time, I was with a gentleman who, I was so volatile with this man. And I would look him in the face and I would say things and I would do things to him that were inconceivable. And I would watch the pain that I would cause him. I watched it move from him, like move into him, into his being. I would see it and I would cry. And I would be so remorseful and I would be so sorry, and I would make a resolution to never act like that again. And within a couple hours, I'd be doing the same thing over and over and over. And anyhow, these experiences, all of this stuff together, I didn't want to be living that way. I knew there was a solution in Alcoholics Anonymous. And I was brought to a place where I felt no connectedness to God whatsoever, no connectedness to people, empty, lonely, suffering from what Paul and I were talking about this morning of a spiritual malady, a soul sickness, an emptiness, and a loneliness, and an isolation. And I didn't want to be living that way. And I turned to this power and I asked this power for help. And I ended up in Alcoholics Anonymous, and these things that, whatever, life changed drastically. Things started changing drastically on the outside. But I became very consumed with the idea that I had of God, of this power, of what does that look like? Because I started doing things outside of Alcoholics Anonymous as I was on this path of seeking God. And I became a part of this fellowship that's outside of here. And my ideas of that power, I became very closed-minded to anything outside of that. And if people talked about things outside of that, they were wrong. They were wrong and I was right. And if it wasn't in this, then you're wrong. And so I prayed, I asked this power for help. I ended up in Alcoholics Anonymous, and my mind was so much in that pride and ego. If you've been here for some time in Alcoholics Anonymous and you have the experience of being sober, the pride and the ego, I'll tell you something, today it is so very important for me to apply Alcoholics Anonymous, not to stand at a podium and talk about it, because the fact of the matter is I'm up here for 50 minutes and I'm doing this. But if you really truly want to know what I do in my life, watch what I do. Don't listen to what I say, watch what I do. Okay, and I share that because today it's so effing important for me to truly not talk about Alcoholics Anonymous, but to do Alcoholics Anonymous because my life is dependent upon it. So the pride and the ego, though, to step out of Alcoholics Anonymous and to have these experiences, to come back is not an easy thing to do. So if you're coming back, welcome to Alcoholics Anonymous. The pride it's challenging, and I can't imagine ever having to go through that experience again because I don't know if my pride and my ego would allow me to come back to AA. I've had that experience, and it's a real thing, man. It's a real thing. And I've had to swallow my pride and to admit when I only have 60 days sober or 90 days sober. I've had to start getting honest. I was lying in meetings about the time that I had because I was afraid of what you were going to think about me. And what happens is in that place, I can never, ever truly connect with you. I can't. It's impossible. If I'm lying to you, it's impossible for me I can't have a relationship with you. So anyhow, time has gone by and I've gotten to a place of saying these things, of saying I just celebrated 1 year sober. And this is the deal in that, is that God's good, man. God's good all the time. Because I was so consumed with what this power looked like and I was trying to figure it out. And I called Charlie. And I've moved away from where he is, but I called him and I said, dude, this is what's going on. And he said, you know what, Heather? He said, when I came to Alcoholics Anonymous, I was told not to think about it and to just do Alcoholics Anonymous. And thank God that he shared that with me because that's what I did. And I didn't think so much about it after that. And I got into working with a sponsor, got into the steps, and I set out to make amends. And this is the deal. I kind of wanted to talk a little bit about with the steps and what that looks like, and maybe that'll end up happening. I don't know. God, whatever you're going to do it. So I knew this is I had enough knowledge and enough understanding here in Alcoholics Anonymous to know that even though I'm in the process of the steps, it's imperative for me to work with other alcoholics and to share with them what it is that we do here. And so 60 days sober, when I had been going to meetings for a few weeks, and I started working with others. And I'm so grateful for that because it allowed me to sit down with them and to share with them of what alcoholism is. And because of that, the pride and the ego and not being able to, I've had a first step experience, but in sitting down with them and sharing with them, I was able to have a whole new experience with that. And thank God. You know what I'm saying? So, and I'm not saying that I'm all telling myself, I'm not saying that to be full of myself, but it is imperative that we work with other alcoholics. It's vital to my own recovery that I do so. It's vital. And thank God, because what happened for me is I went through the process of the steps, and I'm going to share a couple things when I wrap it up about with making amends and stuff, but man, when I was about 7 months sober, I started thinking about death, suicide. And I was doing Alcoholics Anonymous, I'm working with others, I'm praying in the mornings, I've done inventory, I'm making amends, and I'm doing all these things, and I became consumed with the thought of dying. And I would be driving down the freeway, and the cars in front of me would stop. They'd be stopped. And in my mind, I would think, speed up. And I was so consumed that I didn't know how to get outside of that. And this is the thing, is I've had somebody tell me, well, maybe that's an outside issue. But the fact of the matter is I suffer from a spiritual malady. My spirit needs to be treated. My spirit needs to be treated. And I find that in working with others, But the thing about it is my relationship with God has to be right. My relationship with this power has to be right. And what ended up happening is I'm consumed, and I actually called Bob D. And I spoke to him and I said, dude, this is what's going on. I'm like, have you had that experience? And he said to me, and I'll never forget it, and I think about it very often, and he said, Heather, there are people in Alcoholics Anonymous who are low maintenance alcoholics, and they can get by with doing the very least. Like you and I, we're very high maintenance alcoholics. So I would suggest that you, yes, you're working with others, but I would suggest that you go find a place where there are people who are detoxing, and you go start working with them, and you go start carrying the message to them. And I'm like, oh my God, because the reality is I have these sponsees who they're getting time. They're getting time, and we've gone through the steps, and they're in the amends process, and they're doing these things, but it's that, like, the vitality and the whatever. And I immediately, when I found a detox and I found a women's facility that very night, and I went and I just sat in the meetings and I shared the message of Alcoholics Anonymous because I knew that my life is dependent upon it. And what happened is that slowly over time, that feeling went away. It went away, but then it over time returned. And I got to sit down with a gentleman who, this is what happened, dude. You want to talk about the third step and like this stuff that we're talking about here? My relationship with God. It changed for me because I was brought to a place where I said, dude, God. It was really, dude. Really, it was. And I said, dude, you've got to do something here. If you don't, I don't know if I'm going to stay here. And I didn't mean being sober. You know what I mean? I meant like living. Like, I don't know if that's going to happen for me. And I was brought to a place, I came in contact with these individuals who are members of Alcoholics Anonymous they were able to share their exact experience with what I was experiencing. They shared it with me. And they shared what they did to get out of that place. And what happened is it opened me up to a whole new relationship with this power that I've come to turn to. And I was sharing with Doreen before the meeting, and I'm like, maybe it wasn't her. Well, whatever. I was sharing with somebody about the fact that my relationship with God is the most important thing in my life today. There are a lot of things that I desire and I want, but I don't get to arrange those things to suit me today. I don't get to go out into the world and try and get what I want today. I get to sit home. I just moved to Red Bluff, and I did that on a leap of faith. I don't know anybody in Red Bluff. I just went there like, whatever, dude, let's do it. That's where stuff's happening. Stuff's happening, and so this is the deal is I've had these experiences lately where, oh my God, the book means so much to me, dude. It means so much to me. And the words in there they're real. And what we experience here is so fucking real. If we do this, it is real. And so I found myself in this place where, like, I can be alone at perfect peace and ease because I live alone. I live alone and I work from home. And today I cannot seek outside of me to be okay today because it does not work. But I've had to find that out. And today I can sit in the silence and I can sit there for 20 minutes. And the last couple of days, what has been coming to me in this place is be still and know that I am God. That God is in those experiences and in those moments. And I don't have to look outside of me to experience that. I don't have to. It's there. It's available. And it has brought me to a place of a whole new relationship with this power where I trust and I believe and I have faith. And I know that there's so much to be experienced. So much. And today I want to say that I'm a recovered alcoholic in the sense I've recovered from a seemingly hopeless state of mind and body. I have been tapped into a source of power that relieves me of the drink problem and all other problems, so long as I bring them to this power and trust. So one thing I want to share is, this openness brought me to a place where I've gotten to sit down with some people, and I love that the book tells us to be quick to see where religious people are right and to make use of what they offer. And it also asks us that we lay aside prejudice, even against organized religion. And we do these things, and we begin to ask ourselves, like the book says, do not let spiritual terms stop you from honestly asking yourself what they mean to you. And I get to go out into the world today, and I have these interactions with people that are, well, I'm not going to say they're religious. Well, whatever, I will. So Hindus and Buddhists and Christians and all of these different faiths and beliefs. And I get to have conversations with them, and we get to talk about God. So I've started doing this thing where I'm going around and I'm just meeting random people, right? And I'm asking them, like, dude, what does God mean to you? What does God mean to you? When I say God, what does that mean to you? And I've heard some incredible things, right? And it's the craziest thing is that it seems to all come down to this same kind of thing, right? It's within me and you. and you, and you, and you, and you, and you, and you get one, and you get no. It's within us, and quickly. So I got to make amends to my sister. She lives up in Yreka, and I got to go make amends, and it was great. And my sister just celebrated 1 year sober as well. She was with me yesterday and the day before, and they spent the night, and I get to talk with my sister about recovery. And it's great, man. We used to drink together, you know what I mean? I really believed one time that she was getting me kicked out of my house, so I got drunk and I went to her house and I physically attacked her, and that wasn't even happening. You know what I mean? So I got to make amends for those things. And while I was there, I had this little nephew, and he's the cutest little boy, and he's like this blonde hair, little freckle-faced kid, you know what I mean? He's missing teeth. He's just cute, and he just loves me, and I love him. And I made amends to her, and she wanted to go and do something together. And so I'm like, okay, let's do this, So we're in the car and we're driving, and he's sitting in the back seat, and I'm like, Hayden, let me ask you a question. What does God mean to you? And no, I said, no. I said, do you know God loves you? And he said, yeah. And I said, oh my God. Now we're getting serious, right? I'm like, oh my God, this is going to be deep. So I'm like, dude, what does God mean to you? When I say God, what does that mean? And it was just so very simple. And he said, love. He didn't think about it. He didn't try to conjure up some stuff. He simply shared love. And I'm so grateful to that, because I hear people talk about that all the time. And when he shared that with me, I believed him. I've become open, and I believed him. And so today I try and live my life in a state where I exude that, and I live that, and I shared that. And I don't know, man. Things are taking place. You know what I mean? Things are taking place in my life that I know are because of good and because of God. Things have changed drastically within me. I was reading Working with Others last night, and I was thinking about that. Whatever. What's happened is today I'm in a place where, as a result of doing what Alcoholics Anonymous asks of me every single day, I'm in a place where I can think more of you than of myself, where I can give freely of myself and not expect anything in return. And Charlie had shared that with me when I got to Alcoholics Anonymous. He said, Heather, if you want to really do something here in AA, do something for somebody and don't expect anything in return. And here's the thing, don't tell anybody. What? But I've learned what that is and what that means. And to give freely of myself so that others may live. Go figure. It's all Alcoholics Anonymous. So if you're new, man, I hope that you keep coming back. What has worked for me is I've had to become thoroughly convinced I'm an alcoholic first and foremost, and become willing to do what Alcoholics Anonymous asks of me. So I have a sponsor, as I shared. I have a home group. I work with others, and I live Alcoholics Anonymous. I don't just talk about it, I live it. And I know that because of the things that are taking place in my life, and because it's important to me. Paul was saying on the way here that it's important to him to be a good example today, and I love that so much. It is so important for me today as a sober, participating member in Alcoholics Anonymous to be a good example of AA, to be a good example, because whether we're aware of it or not, people that are new here to Alcoholics Anonymous are watching what we're doing. They are watching us, and from my own experience, it has been what I've seen other people do that made the difference. What I've seen them do, not what I've heard that they do, what I've seen them do. So let's do this shit, man. Anyways, thanks for letting me share. That's it.
Hello, my name is Lauren, and I am an alcoholic. I'm also the media librarian for the Sunday Morning Gratitude speaker meetings. If you would like to request additional copies of the Sunday Morning Gratitude speaker, or you would like to request a copy
to receive a free copy of our quarterly newsletter, The Anal Retentive,
of the Sunday Morning Gratitude speaker, you may email me at media-librarian@gmx.com. Thank you.